Hey everyone, and welcome to Geeksvana Live during what is actually a very big week in the drone world here in the UK. The news that we wondered would ever actually come has actually landed. The UK will be recognising class markings from January next year. Also, there has been more discussion around the evergreen topic, the topic that never goes away, of VLOS, or of course visual line of sight. These questions and more will be dealt with during the show this evening, along with your questions from the live chat as well. So if you have a question, please tag @Geeksvana or risk it not being seen. And we've got all the live chat is huge on a very big screen because I've got wonderful sight on, honestly, officer. But yes, it's on a very big screen behind me here so I can see it. If you tag @Geeksvana, it comes up really big, frankly. So tonight we're going to be joined by two regular faces here on Geeksvana, Graham Degg and Matt Williams. So we can get a pretty varied view on some of your opinions. And they're already messing around in the background. This is just so unprofessional. Hey guys, how are you? What are you doing, Williams?
We're very well, aren't we, Matt?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. Yes, how are you?
We're good. We're good.
Just doing stuff and things just to cause trouble if we can in the background.
Stuff and things. This is probably the closest to something going wrong just because we've been messing around during the pre-show that I think I've ever come, and it's starting to give me a cold sweat actually because I've just realised I was messing around too much that I forgot to change a couple of windows round. But yes. Graham, how are you? You've been away for a few days and you've come back to the UK drone world exploding in excitement, frankly.
Yeah, I've been. It's one of those strange things. I've been doing very, very family-orientated stuff over a very extended weekend, and I could see stuff going on in the background, and thought I can't dive in and do an awful lot on this because I'm just not available to do it. And so it's been rather frustrating, but lovely to come back and join you guys and talk about it.
Thank you for giving us the long version. And Matt, it's good to see you again. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're well. Your background is looking really good. Is that an AI green screen background, or is that actually your background?
It's all green screen. It's all green screen. No. And when Graham says he could see all this going on in the background, what he actually meant was us messing around. It's
yes,
lol.
Yeah,
no, it's all real.
Yeah.
It's all real. Look.
Oh look! Oh, it actually is real. Do you know what? I genuinely thought that was a green screen. It's that fire.
We can all shake our tree.
Well, I'm not going to shake my tree because it's too far away. But yeah. So we have 3 live environments for everything to go wrong. But right, on with the show, shall we? So, and as you might expect, there has been excitement and generally happiness initially felt about the class marking news, meaning, of course, that you'll be able to fly, for instance, the DJI Air 3S with a C1 label with 0 separation of people, just no intentional overflight in congested areas, etc. This excitement has also raised several questions, and we're going to take a look at those first today. We are, as I said, we're going to come backwards and forwards and look at the chat as we go between the questions as well. So firstly, it's actually going to be one which is focused on the world of FPV and self-build drones. And we're also going to be touching on RC model aircraft on this answer as well. But the main questions coming in are simply focused on what will happen to self-build drones, which are gaining, which of course themselves won't be gaining a class marking, would be pretty much impossible. Well, let's bring the guys in and have a chat about this, because this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously it isn't the best of news in terms of things for the FPV self-build quad community, because at the moment, under the extended transitional period that we've been in for, is it 20 years now? You can fly any legacy drone up to 2 kilograms with an A2 CFC in a congested area with all the separations, etc. However, once the class markings come in, legacy drones such as FPV builds over 250 grams are all going to be relegated to the A3 airspace, so far from people and towns, etc. And it's obviously unfortunate because it's the same for the UK RC model aircraft, bizarrely. So a guy with his plane, and Matt had this story and had this sort of thought process back when all of this was starting. I remember Matt having a video and talking about just going to a field and playing with an RC model aircraft with your kids suddenly becomes something that is actually becoming more and more complicated, because of course it's all under the same DMARES class marking system. And it's something which is a difficult one, isn't it? Because of course it's FPV is kind of a, especially in the UK, it really can be a town centre-y type park sort of, you know, walking down the road to your local park type of situation. But actually, with just a date passing into January 1st, 2026, you won't be able to do that with self-builds. It's a difficult one, that, isn't it, for people that, because of course these people know what they're doing. They're actually building their own craft.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's one of those, right? The C-class markings coming in is a big win, I think, in general for the industry, which is awesome. And you know, it's something that we were kind of, I think it's fair to say, promised when the new EASA rules came in. It was something that we all expected to happen. There's no reason really, aside from the kind of Market Surveillance Authority not existing in the UK until now, and that's the organisation that you need to be able to sign off. Trying to simplify it, on the C markings being something that's acceptable. So we've got that now. The CAA have just been granted that, as far as I'm aware. So, you know, that moves us forwards. But yeah, it does at the same time, although it opens up that world to people with C mark drones, and that's exciting. It does, I think, make things a little bit more difficult for the kind of recreational community to be able to do what they want to do. But at the same time, I think, as we've seen, and this is one of the discussions I had many years ago, you know, 5 years ago now, I suppose, or 6 years ago, when I started telling people about this back in the day on the old channel. At the same time, I do feel as though the majority of those types of flight are done in places that would fall under the A3 anyway.
Yeah, so, I don't know, to be honest, because you know, let's say, you know, I went flying. There's a video on our members section that people can go and watch, where I went flying with a channel member, and that was an abandoned location. It was an old brickworks, and it was actually technically within a congested area. So the distances and everything else like that would have started to actually become a little bit interesting from that point of view. And of course, you know, the fact that they're self builds, that's it. You know, it just wouldn't have been possible, basically, unless you're going to go out and get an operational authorization. Now, there is obviously things like Article 16, which we will talk about, but there is also some work which is happening with the BMFA, and actually with EASA. They are working in consultation with EASA to differentiate what RC model aircraft are, and they want to bring that to the UK. So there is some hopes down the line there, but obviously who knows at the moment. There's nothing to say that the UK CAA will have to recognise that or anything. One solution obviously is Article 16. I would personally recommend FPV UK. It's a really good membership, and you also, at their gold level, you even get some commercial insurance thrown in there as well. I am a member of it, and thank you, Simon, for sending me my FPV UK baseball cap with my membership card. And you know, there's different levels of benefits there, etc., and different things you can get for it. But it's a chunk of community, and there's been a few comments on my recent videos on the C-class issue from the FPV community saying, well, what about us type of situation? And it's, I think Article 16 obviously gives that benefit, but we are still talking about, there is obviously a hurdle, there is a gate that you've got to go through, a payment gate that you've got to go through to be able to continue doing something that you were able to do before. So it becomes a little bit difficult. Obviously, sub 250 gram self builds are absolutely incredible these days. I'm amazed at the quality that they can fly. And if the CAA, as we expect they will be, keep their policies in terms of legacy sub 250, then they'll be able to do that as well. But it's a difficult one, isn't it, Graham? I know obviously you're out most weekends flying FPV, so this is obviously
always, I can't give out. but it is a really difficult one. It's one of those, they've got to draw the line somewhere sort of situations. And I was just thinking, as we were going through that, thinking, okay, what if they just said, okay, self builds below 500 grams, because we've got the current transition arrangements, and I'm not sure that anybody's been knocked off their feet or their bikes by sub 500 grams being flown against an A2 CFC and A1 far. But then you start to say, well, okay, so they're not C marked, and then you introduce a confusion on camera drones that aren't C marked. It just becomes difficult in terms of legislating. I can sort of understand when you're legislating, you have to draw lines.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, of course. And of course, when you are talking about class markings, you cannot class mark you could class mark an FPV drone, but then the minute you change the props for a different brand of props, the minute you upgrade anything on there, or the the frame breaks and you have to replace an arm or something else, it loses it. I have wondered whether or not some of the bind and fly companies might capitalize on this a little bit and actually produce C-rated drones, especially the ones which do sell in numbers. But of course, again, we're talking about a niche on a niche on a niche there in terms of getting enough numbers together to justify the being able to do that. Now, it's a declarative conformity, isn't it, with the class markings, certainly in the EU at the moment. So there is an opportunity there for companies to do that without having to, invest too heavily. But yeah, it's all fraught with all sorts of things because, of course, it has to be minimizing impact when it hits someone, that type of thing. Most FPV drones are built for strength and to be rigid and to not flex so that they can obviously fly quicker and maintain their course. So it's a really difficult one, but we will keep you everybody informed and abreast of what's happening with the BMFA concepts because they are working closely with the ASA on that and whether or not that's something that we can bring over into the UK in terms of a differential between the different sports, basically. But do remember, Article 16's there. There is a really good video, even if I say it myself, on the channel about Article 16. So go and have a look at that. And again, there are links there to the FPV UK as well. Just very quickly in the chat, Yogi, good to see you. What will happen to individuals who have invested in the A2 CofC certification? Well, we have good news coming. We're actually going to be talking about A2 CofC in a little bit, so keep tuned for that one. And John Burns is saying, with C markings coming in, is it true that the Air 3S can be flown very close to people, but with no overflight once C markings are introduced? Yes. Basically, it is the system which has been promised in the press release is the one that retained in EU law, and that will give you the C1 is zero separation, just no intentional overflight, basically. So it really will open up the world of C1 drones, and a little bit like we had with sub 250. I don't think anybody really thought things like the Mini 3, Mini 4 would necessarily, when they thought of that system, would necessarily be in existence, frankly. I don't think they necessarily thought C1 drones would actually be something like the Air 3S. I think the technology has moved forward quite quickly, so that actually we've now got a situation where who would have thought back in the days the sub 250 was the benchmark. I honestly think, Matt, that they thought that was probably toys below that, rather than actually being something you can really use, like the more recent minis, basically.
Absolutely, and actually, I think it goes beyond us thinking that was actually what was written into the initial version of the regulations.
That's right.
It did say toys under 250 grams, and I remember when I think it was the DJI Mini first came out, and it was like, what? This is 249 grams. It just came in just as all of the new regulations dropped in at the start of 2020. I think it was, off the top of my head, and it was a game changer. And of course, that then I think you have to flex what the regulations are always going to lag behind slightly, right, by their very nature. But yeah, I think that changed the game, and the tech has grown, or reduced, I should say, I suppose, much more quickly than anyone could have anticipated.
But it's worth reiterating as many times as I possibly can as well, of course, that each time we end up having a situation where we think something is going to become risky. So, when sub 250 happened and the minis started coming, etc., and that type of thing, everyone thought there's going to be tons of problems with lots and lots of all sorts of problems. And every time regulation does step off, once the drones and once the tech's been proven to be safe, there hasn't been a sudden wave of incidents and issues and that type of thing. And we know there are some people waiting in the wings for that to happen, frankly. So we know genuinely we're not getting the issues. So it's important as well that obviously these are things which are essentially proving themselves to be safe now, aren't they, Graham?
Absolutely. To be fair, I was one of those people who assumed there would be safety issues, but actually the issue we tend to see more is the privacy or the perceived privacy issue.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's interesting, isn't it? As you say, the privacy one has kind of leapfrogged over the just safety core issue in terms of especially sub 250. But yeah, it's really interesting. Mike is asking, at Geeksvana, are we expecting the CAA to amend open category so all drones C0 and up will require a flyer and op ID, not just the latter? Yeah, as I was saying in my last video, which talked about the C label formal announcement, there is still the CAA RPAS review going on, and that is reviewing the entirety of the open category. If you remember, in that consultation, they were even potentially talking about reworking the airspace so that the A2 airspace would essentially not be there anymore, and that type of thing. And certainly, yes, having flyer IDs for everybody. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens. We have to remember that with this coming in, this is essentially, there isn't much time left. They have to do something at the end of this year. We've already extended the transitional period. So there was a hard wall coming, and you have to decide what you're going to do. And they've had this directive via Rachel Reeves, Chancellor, in the government, to basically say, right, you're going to do this. In my opinion, that's just as much because it's already in retained EU law. So actually, it's a cheap way of moving past that deadline. But there will still be a review. So I think later in 2026 and beyond that, in the medium term, I think there will be more changes that we perhaps won't always be as happy as we are in the C labels, which actually reminds me of when we got the extension to the transition period, but everyone was like, yay! And then it realized actually the cost of that is we're scrapping class marking. There will be no C label drones. Which wasn't quite as happy and fluffy, frankly. So yes, but
they consulted on it. They did consult on it.
They did consult, but isn't it one of those situations again where we ended up with the consultation and with the unintended consequences?
Yes.
You know, and that to me isn't really consulting, because you're not being completely open about what could happen. And I think if they'd put that out and said, by the way, you'll also lose C class, I wonder, because there was such a reaction to that happening, I do wonder what would happen. Perhaps a similar reaction to say, we're going to charge you £500 to save you 2 weeks of an application process on operational authorization.
I don't think anybody here is thinking of the word disingenuous. I really don't.
Never. How dare you even suggest such a thing? So, right, on with the next one. So one common question around class markings has actually been what will happen in terms of existing legacy sub 250 gram drones. Well, if everything stays as is, you will still be able to use any sub 250 gram drone in the A1 airspace, including self-build FPV, as I was saying before, flying over people, but of course not crowds. If your sub 250 gram drone already has a label, the firmware is likely to be updated and the restrictions applied in terms of the things like height restrictions, etc. So this is an interesting one, of course, because this is a policy rather than being something that's in the actual legislation, where they've basically said that sub 250 gram drones, the legacy ones, we can keep that. And that was one of the lines even before this extension that was showed a differential between us and the EASA, basically. I don't expect this to necessarily change, I have to say, personally, because again, as we were just saying, there isn't really a safety case to not allow.
There hasn't been a problem, has there?
No, that's right. So I think it's probably something that's going to be happening there. And Dan the Drone Man's actually saying there'll be a lot of C0 drone owners crying if those labels get activated. Yeah, well, it's interesting because, of course, this is down to manufacturers as well, but of course then pressure on the manufacturers, because when this of course came in across Europe, it did happen initially on the updates for the UK drones as well, because of course DJI see us all as one part of one region essentially for their tech side of things. And it took obviously the outcry for that to get fixed. So it'll be interesting, because I do wonder whether just all of their legacy drones up to a certain point will receive the update. So we'll have to wait and see what actually happens from that point of view. So
now,
yeah, go on.
Can I just dive in there, Sean, because I was looking at this earlier. Because
dive in, sir. I love that. I love that saying.
It appears to me that the 120 meter maximum limit fixed in hardware is associated with the level where you don't do the flyer ID. If they brought in the flyer ID so that you can't fly it above 120 meters, because that's what that test trains you, that's probably one of the most important things, then there's no real logical reason why they couldn't use the C1 drone, the C1 rule, which says you can adjust it as long as the pilot is informed of what he's doing and that it keeps a track of the height.
which is actually why there are C1 and C0
Yeah.
labels shipped with some of the minis around when this came in the ASA region, which actually gave people the choice to which one do you want to choose. And in fact, I've had emails from people that have still got those labels and saying, is there one I should choose? Which obviously the advice at the moment is do nothing. But it is an interesting one. But again, I think that as soon as we get past this benchmark and we're all excited about it all happening, I think we could then end up with another consultation, basically, to then go through the actual review process, which could get rid of things like C2 in the open category and that type of thing. I just don't know. When you look at the consultation they put out, again, it does depend, because we weren't necessarily expecting the class markings to come back under the previous government in the way that they have. So, but again, perhaps that review may get, kicked down the line or even cancelled by the existing government. Who knows? Because of course, the CAA will ultimately take their lead from government. So,
I think commercial operators, if anybody's listening from the CAA or government, the commercial operators will feel mighty kicked in the sensitive parts if the C2 is removed as an option, as well as everything that's going on with the
yes, we won't start that panic, because we have nothing that tells us at all that any of that's happening. That is me going down one of my many rabbit holes in my mind. And yes, we should probably
just get in the bit in early.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll know I was quiet on that entire section, because the speculation is not good for anybody.
Okay. Up next, we looked at the it was really kind of half dead A2 Certificate of Competency, and how this news breathes new life into the certificate. Although we could lose obviously things like the sub 500 grand benefits, we will, which will be actually, I think, more than replaced by the C1 benefits. The C2 aircraft, such as the larger DJI Mavic models, will become very, very useful, which will actually be allowing drones like the M30 to be flown pretty close to people in the open category. This will open up a world of commercial possibilities without overly restrictive regulations. Now, this has got a few talking points in terms of that. This does, in my opinion, or not in my opinion, another one of the conversations with myself in my own mind, really. Is that the white coats coming in into this? Is that actually, does the A2 CFC with the C2 drones, and bearing in mind the size of drones that are C2 drones, like the new Mavic 4 that's coming, the M30, things like that, the M3E technically at the moment, well, that's about to become a C1. Does A2 CFC weirdly now potentially trump the OA PDRA01? It's less complex, it's cheaper, and for many use cases, I think that it could be a much easier way for people to run their businesses. Basically, what do you guys think?
I think if it doesn't today, it could tomorrow.
We're talking obviously in January 1st when this comes in. I think especially when if we then start to get changes to PDRA01 in terms of
essentially it's another tool, it's another competence tool, isn't it? It's I've got A2 CFC, I've got an OA, and I've got an OA based on an OSC, and I choose which one and I've got FPV UK A16. I choose which one I use depending on the circumstances.
Indeed. It will give you even, and again, obviously, you've even got the sub 250. There's so many tools within that kit. But Matt, this is probably where the OA overflight for PDRA01 becomes an essential tool for the future in terms of, for me, a real line in the sand of why would you go to that level? Because it's heavier aircraft, of course, with at the moment the 50-meter bubble, and if that changes, then again, it takes more of that value away from that sector, doesn't it? Really, this specific category.
It does, and this again, this is one of the things that that since it was all announced back in 2019 that we were going to move over to the ASA regulations, I built the entire channel back in the day around all of these changes, and the whole point that I was trying to get across to people was that there are now, rather than being Article 94 and 95 as it was at the time, 166, 167 as it was in the past before that, we're moving to a place where it becomes more of a kind of almost a recipe card as to what are you trying to achieve based on what your client needs for data. So you then start at the finish and work your way backwards. And that's where all of a sudden, and Graham alluded to it earlier, you've talked about it as well, the aircraft and the qualifications become tools to be used appropriately or as required to achieve what it is that you need to achieve in the safest, most efficient way. So sometimes it may be that you can just operate in the open class and the open category and do whatever it is that you need to do. But there will be, and there are some jobs where you will need to have your PDRA 01 or, you know, whatever it changes to in the future. There'll be times when you might need your L1 or your L2 because you're doing certain things. There may be times where you need an OSC and whatever that, you know, operational authorization under SORA 2.5 becomes. We don't, you know, so it's going to be very much the right tool for the job, and that isn't just the aircraft, that's the qualification as well. But obviously, as we've already discussed, the aircraft are also improving so quickly at such a rapid rate that actually it may be that we can do pretty much everything that we want to without having to do too many qualifications, which is not necessarily a bad thing as long as everyone's doing it safely.
And yes, and I'd like to see a little bit of creativity in the CAA with the PDRA system, with declarative PDRAs, because those are the sensibly priced ones, to say let's have a PDRA 02, 03, whatever it may be, to say you can use these C-class drones, and C-class is specifically really for open category use, but they've gone through a process of safety assessment. Add on to that the fact you're doing under a PDRA and you've got CAA oversight. So can we please allow overflight with those drones? So you might have a sub 4 kilo drone and you can do overflight using that if you can't do that under a PDRA 01.
And for those who can remember the wheel turning long enough ago, that was actually what the system was intended to create, right? We were meant to go on to this GVC system where you could get your GVC. Yeah, you could get your GVC. That gave you access to the PDRA 01. And then you could do, the idea was that we were told we were going to be allowed to do bolt-ons to enable other aircraft to be used at different weight categories and safety levels, you know, and different training that would allow us to do that. So, you know, hopefully I don't think we will move towards that personally, because I think the aspiration will be that we go L1, L2. So the extra official steps beyond the GVC rather than the bolt-ons. But it would have been nice, and it would be nice if that happens. But I have a funny feeling. Call me a cynic, but
never.
Yeah,
I would call you many things, but yes.
Make you so cynical, man.
Yeah, but I don't know. It would be nice, but I think there are already steps in place to take us in a slightly different direction.
But that was a bit of a flash down memory lane, wasn't it? The bolt-ons, crikey. The excitement of the bolt-ons. PTSD over here.
COVID period discussions with you, Matt, on a lunchtime as I wandered into town to get some sandwiches. Yeah, that was some interesting chats.
Well, that was a bit TMI, but never mind. No, that's fine. Yeah, exactly right. Right.
Egg and cress.
A couple of quick final questions on the topic of C labels. Of course, we will have more content towards that particular topic towards the end of the year as other announcements happen and that type of thing. But of course, this is talking about, will existing drones with C labels be allowed? And it obviously, the answer here is basically yes. It does depend on the recognised conformity assessment body that the CAA appoint. The UK I would have thought, will likely use the same as the ASA. But obviously time will tell from that point of view. And in any case, DJI will be able to meet any that they choose, as it's basically the same hurdles. They've already essentially had those aircraft. So there might be, if they choose a different body, then perhaps there'll be a slight lag while that happens. But I would have thought they're going to basically do that, which again obviously means drones like, you know, there are some out there like the Mavic 3 Classic, which obviously is discontinued. That's a C1 Mavic 3. Basically, and some of the original Mavic 3s as well. So obviously it's got heavier and is now a C2 for the Pro. But yeah, there's some very exciting drones out there within that particular classification. And then finally, this is something that I think I have a simple answer to, but people have been asking in terms of whether or not there will be a brick wall, or will there be another transitional period We don't know for certain, of course, but I would not expect there to be another period of adjustment time. It'll probably just, in my opinion, be a hard switch over on Jan 1, 2026. Although you now watch the CAA, just because I've said that, they'll probably give us 6 months. Hey, that's a good way of getting 6 month lead time, isn't it? Me saying what I would like. But what do you think on that, Matt? Do you think it will? I can't see there being another, because obviously this is the end of the second transitional period, and it's difficult because we don't know we're in a transition period, so people aren't preparing. But telling us now, there is still, the best part of the year for people to get used to the fact that there's going to be that hard wall Jan 1.
Yeah, I think, again, for me, this comes down to a communications piece, right, from the CAA. So this is, okay, cool. This has been announced. Now we need to, call it whatever it is. Technically, I suppose this is a transitional period between the rules and regulations as they currently are, and the rules and regulations as they'll be on the, midnight on the 31st of December this year. So I think that, for me, where it's semantics, really. We are in the transitional period between now and then. Call it what it is, but yeah, I think if the CA push a few bits out like that to say, right, this is what is happening, this is the direction we're going in, perfect. Yep. This is where we are now, this is where we're going to be. In fact, don't even say where we are now, because people don't care. Where are we going to be?
That's right. Yeah, well,
and it's just, and it should be as simple as that. Maybe I need to bring a Mr. MPW channel back and start doing some videos about it.
Where are we going? When will we get there? Because a lot of this is going to impact organizations, companies who have to invest, and they need to know what platforms to be able to invest in, and that's money, and that's people putting dinner on the table, as we keep saying. So
yes, exactly. Graham likes putting dinner on the table. Just very quickly. Thank you, CJ Drone Photography, for the £1 super chat. And of the over 150 people that are currently watching, could you all hit the like button for me, because it makes me smile. And of course, if you are new here, you can do this thing, which is hitting the subscribe button to get more awesome Q&As like this, which happen regularly on the channel, but also all of the wonderful drone content that happens here as well. So that's C labels right now. What's that? I hope that Mavic 3 is behind you and not one of your cupboard monsters. Yeah, shut up, Paul. You've no idea, Paul. You've no idea, in actual fact. Right. So next up, VLOS, and it's still being debated out there, which of course is just going to be one of those topics that everyone debates. Kind of like, how fast can you go through the speed cameras or the average cameras, etc., and argue about a ticket and ask if they've calibrated their cameras and all of that stuff, which actually I've never actually done personally, although I've only ever had a couple of speeding tickets myself. But to me, there is no debate from the point of view of what will happen in court, because obviously a judge is not going to sit there and have a chat about it. It's a really interesting one, and I know this is a topic, Matt, as well. You've been around for a long time, and VLOS is such an interesting topic, because it's one that we did have guidance on for a minute there, but then of course the drones became much smaller. And although we now have more freedom with those smaller drones, of course, we can't see them as far away. I've got an Inspire 1 in the corner of the studio down here. You probably can't. You can just see the top of it there. There you go. That was steady. Yeah, it's something which it's been one of those topics, hasn't it? But it's trying to explain to people, and obviously you've done this with your videos in the past as well, that it doesn't really matter what Joe from Facebook thinks, or even necessarily what you think. The thing that you need to prepare yourself and fly towards is what you think a judge will say in court, should that ever happen, isn't it? That's really the only opinion, unless you've got a lot of money to appeal these things. That's the only opinion that really matters.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said from the very beginning that, and the angle that I come at this from, for anyone who might not be aware, is that I was a military pilot before I kind of moved officially into the drone space a long time ago. But it's my friends and colleagues who are still flying around at low level that is the reason that I spent 10 years trying to teach everybody all day, every day, for free on the internet, and through coming and doing our courses and things when I used to do that, because this is all about being responsible. It's all about looking after each other and making sure ultimately that people go home at the end of the day. And that might sound melodramatic, and it hasn't happened yet, thank goodness. Hopefully the work that we've done as a group has, not just us, but as a collective group across the industry, is one of the reasons that that hasn't happened yet. But
Indeed.
you know, it's about being sensible. It's about doing the right thing. And ultimately, what I always used to say to people, whether they were flying for me when we had our operations business, when I was teaching people, and when I reach out to people on the internet, is put yourself in a position where, heaven forbid, you end up in the dock in a coroner's court. And fundamentally, then, is it even worth arguing about whether you had visual line of sight of the drone for the purpose of avoiding collisions? Oh, it's a, you know, I can see it from 150 meters away, but I can see it 400 meters away. I can see the lights. Cool. That's awesome. No problem at all. I'm sure you can. That's amazing. But what happens if and when something does go wrong? And the chances of that are infinitesimally small. I agree.
Yes.
And everything is about reducing the risk to as low as reasonably practicable, not eliminating the risk. Stepping out of your door in the morning is a risk. Staying in bed is a risk. But it's about minimizing it where possible. And
it is about minimizing, and of course, it's also about minimizing the risk to industry and to the hobby, from the point of view that, of course, you know, if an aircraft comes across a drone and doesn't come into contact, it's still got to take evasive action. You know, we've seen the headlines recently of helicopters having to I'm going to say swerve, take evasive action to alter their course dramatically. But that kind of thing is something which holds everybody else up in the hobby and the industry, because of course it's seen as a conflict, it's seen as a risk, and whether or not it is, that's another argument for another day in a science lab somewhere. The perception is there, and the enforcement will rain down on it, frankly. So it's a really important one. Of course, yeah, go on, Graham, sorry.
And at the same time this year, we've seen the evidence that I think a lot of people didn't believe in when they saw it, which is that, yeah, these things can penetrate the wing of an aircraft. Now, fortunately, the one that happened didn't hit anything vital inside, but it might have done, or it might have hit the cockpit. And, you know, Matt knows what that's like. It's, you know, these things can happen, and they have started to happen. So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's and that becomes a whole complicated thing of actually other parts, more critical parts of the airplane would have been stronger and that type of thing, and this and that. And it's a firefighting aircraft, so it's designed to be, you know, as light as possible to take on water. And there's so many arguments. But as Matt was saying, it's kind of like you don't want to be having the argument in the first place.
No.
Is the situation you want to be in? You want to be in that. I mean, I also believe that VLOS will become something of a non-topic when remote ID comes in the UK, because it's looking likely that we'll be looking at something like a network remote ID, in which case, you know, how far you were flying. Imagine a police computer being able to dial up your car and tell you how fast you were driving on the M1 last night. You know, it's going to become something of a non-topic. And perhaps with class markings coming in, there is the EASA calculator that Andy reminded me of in one of the comments. And, you know, there are ways of looking at it from a scientific point of view with VLOS, but just remember, that's the only thing. I wasn't looking to start a massive debate. I'm not going to say mass debate, a massive debate about VLOS in terms of, you know, the debate of what it should be. It's more raising awareness, as the gentleman from the Wirral found out, that when you get into court, your opinion is for naught. It's the legislation and the reasonable person's interpretation of that legislation that will happen. And remember that police are becoming more sophisticated with detection and investigation as well. So the fact that, you know, he was pulled over and the drones were taken from his car, he wasn't even flying his drone. It's a thing there. And remember as well that this isn't going to happen for borderline issues. This isn't going to be, you know, the police hiding in the bushes waiting to jump out because you went behind a building for 2 seconds. Don't do that, because it's BVLOS. But I'm not saying you should. But, you know, that isn't what's happening. More often than not, we're looking at situations where these problems will come up because something's happened, a crash has happened, or you've been, you know, you're in front of the police for something else, etc. That's where a lot of these issues actually end up coming up. And just very quickly, thank you, Mark, Aztec Drones. Good to see you, sir, for the £2 super chat. I really appreciate it. You are amazing. I hope Mark's okay. I mean, Mark is actually Aztec Drones. If anybody hasn't seen Mark's work, go over onto LinkedIn and give him a follow. Let me highlight so his name comes up properly. Because Mark is actually one of the first people who really, with mini drones and open category, really got on with it in terms of the commercial side of things. I think whilst other people were sort of not sneering, but were still a little bit sort of looking down their nose somewhat. At the situation, Mark was out there earning money with it basically, and doing some really, really fun and really cool work with it basically, which is awesome. Clive Clark Watson, I'm just going to highlight yours so you can see that it hasn't been blocked. I don't know why. Did you put a link in there? That's the only thing that gets blocked. Or, of course, if you call me an effing bleep, then YouTube does tend to. Hey, you know, I'm not blaming you, but yes.
I can't see anything. No, we haven't moderated anything of yours.
Yeah, no, and in fact, we haven't. There's actually zero moderation that's happened this evening. Do we actually even have a moderator in the chat? Shh, don't tell everyone that. But do you know, I actually don't think we have an active moderator this evening. But
it's about to kick off in the chat.
It's about to kick off in the chat. That's a really good way to get more engagement, isn't it? To get people chatting in the chat. There's no more. Oh, there you go. Smeghead's there. And he said no modding so far.
As well. I've got it in front of
you're
me.
there as well. Cool, excellent. Some super chats. Thank you, people.
Yeah, there you go.
A couple of $2 super chats from Dom, Northside Hawk. Good to see you, Dom. Hope you're well, sir. He's reminding us he's been a member for 30 months of the very specific network. Thank you. That's so generous.
Oh, well done. Yeah,
you're a gent. And actually, I'm going to plug Dom's channel as well, actually, very quickly, because he's got some really cool stuff. Down Under. It's down under. It's not down under to him, but it's down under to us. Sorry for that dad joke. But there we go. So right, we're getting towards the end of the show, but I wanted to bring something up which has been in this sort of spin. Moving around. Can I ask for a shout out? Yes, of course you can, CJ Drone Photography. I've chatted to the wonderful Graham and chatted to Matt on LinkedIn as well. # veteran. Yes, indeed. We know you as a veteran, sir. And again, another channel member, so thank you. I have to say, it is awesome. It's always awesome. It always puts a smile on my face, genuinely, when I look through the live chat, especially when I review it afterwards. And so many names are green because there are channel members that come along and join us on a consistent basis on these live shows. It really genuinely means an awful lot to me. Thank you. So does your money, of course, but no joke. Sorry, I had to make that joke better. It's like 50 members. I'll get an email from YouTube tomorrow and say something you did in that live stream didn't work because you lost 60 members. But yeah, no, thank you guys. Genuinely, I really do appreciate it. It's such a unique and direct way to support the channel. And it does genuinely help. It helps pay the rent on this place for a start. That's one thing. And NB Visuals, has been a member for 3 months at Sporter Plus level. Thank you, sir. But yes, but as I said, so there's if you're a LinkedIn follower, as CJ Drone Photography was saying he is, you may be aware that there's something that's been happening in Matt's world at the moment, and he's got a little request to make. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, I would recommend that you go over and follow him so you can find out about it as well. But here's Matt with a little 60-second reminder of it, and also to give you an email contact, which will make sense in just a moment.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't been following along on LinkedIn, and for those who have, thank you for your support through this. For anyone who isn't aware, I actually sold UAV Hub over a year ago now, and the company that I sold to or was acquired by, I was set to stay with for a number of years and have an earn out at the end. That was kind of the deal. Now, I very quickly established once I joined the company that my personal values and integrity didn't necessarily align with the company that I joined. So I made the very difficult decision to walk away from UAV Hub. Now, I kind of put it in a box and locked myself away from it. I took a few months away, and now I'm coming back to the drone industry, which is quite exciting, and starting to do these kind of things, which is amazing. But what I would say is that if anybody, and I was going to put a video out tomorrow, an update video on this story. So the story is about, or the piece is about a company called Velatus Aerospace, Canadian publicly traded company. I was going to put a piece out tomorrow, but actually we've had so much kind of evidence and information sent to us over the last 5 days since I did this work or this piece on LinkedIn, that actually we're having to take it under advisement now as to what actually the sensible thing to do is moving forward. So I'll be putting an update out tomorrow potentially, but the actual piece won't be coming tomorrow. I'll be dropping that in a week or so's time, I think, again, under advisement. So, yeah, but if you have any information or evidence of anything that you haven't been happy about or you've heard about regarding Velatus Aerospace, please drop me an email. It's the email is velatusstories@gmail.com. So that's Velatus Stories 2 S's in the middle at gmail.com. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll keep you all up to date, and you can find the email address on there.
Excellent, thank you, Matt. And I've put the I've put the email address in the chat as well. So yeah, and it's, you know, it is something that I know the community will be frustrated about for you anyway, but it's been incredible seeing your posts and just, you know, how many people even publicly are reaching out, which always tells you something probably fairly juicy going on there behind the scenes. And obviously you're finding that out from the point of view that you're delaying an update as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things I want to just reiterate, mate, if I can just take the 10 seconds to do so, is that this isn't a witch hunt. It isn't me as a frustrated ex-business owner, you know, sold out and got pushed out kind of thing. This is for the good of the industry. If there is something that we're not that's going on that perhaps isn't in the best interests of the shareholders and potential investors and business owners, it's just you know, genuinely now at the stage where it's like, this needs to be called out. Potentially we need to investigate this a bit deeper as an industry and just help each other out and make sure that we're all aware. And it may come to nothing. It may just be that we're all disgruntled business owners, and that's what it is. But at the same time, if you don't ask and you don't,
that's it. It is a fact-finding mission. You know, if there's nothing there, then there's no problem.
And that's all it is at the moment. That's all it is. There's no accusation. There's no, you know, I don't want anyone to go out and do anything with shares or anything like that. You know, this is just to find out if there's something we need to look at further.
Can you call the broker and cancel that? Thanks. Do it now, please. Thank you. Cheers. I'm actually talking to a dirt splodge on the wall. But,
yeah, so there we go.
Thank you.
Stay tuned.
Stephen Green, thank you very much. Hub for Drone Ops. Appreciate the £4 super chat. That is actually your first super on a live stream. It's telling me, so I'm not sure if it's a new account or it's just the first time you've been drawn to do that, but I really appreciate it. Thank you. So yes. Also, actually, I noticed there was some chat about ads in the live chat. If you're new here, so you know, it's actually not my audience complaining about it necessarily. They do let me know in the chat, so I know afterwards when ads happen and that type of thing, because it winds me up having ads in live shows, because we're chatting away, Matt's saying something really, really important, and then of course, you know, something happens basically, and an advert pops up and you have to rewind it 30 seconds. I have got some really good news on that, and we might be switching over to a new system that actually allows me to still advertise, because obviously that is, you know, we don't have sponsors here on the channel. It is one of the main ways that we earn revenue to keep the doors open here, one of them, but I'll be explaining that to channel members in a show tomorrow, actually, which obviously are most of the people that are talking about this as well. And Michaela, thank you for being a member of 6 Months Supporter Plus and such an active person on the channel as well. I really do appreciate all of your comments, etc. I really enjoyed your flight over, I'm going to say Doncaster. Is Doncaster the one that's currently out of operation?
Yeah, temporary. Yeah,
she did a really good flight over there, actually. This isn't an advert process, Dan the flipping drone man. You know, I give one person a shout out, and now Dan the drone man, just because he's like an actual really good guy who helps everybody out in the industry and stuff, and he thinks he should get some kind of shout out now. But yes, no, I'm actually joking. I'm actually doing that while I find your channel name. And he does actually have.
Hey, if we can't help each other out, what can we do, eh?
Ignore each other and block them. That's what I tend to. Yeah, there's Dan the drone man. Go follow him. We should probably end this before 50 people ask for a shout out, shouldn't we? But no, seriously, do go across and see Dan's work, because he does actually know what he's talking about, and he's out there flying, which is wonderful. Excellent. AirTech Imageries is actually asking, UAV Hive still has the same crew running day to day. We do miss Matt. We are still going strong. Is that somebody from within?
They do.
Yeah, from within.
I think no. So that's Toby. Toby was one of our
Toby
in Wolverhampton, who many people, I think it is anyway, who many people have probably been and done their examinations with. So absolutely, like the team at UAV Hub, Tom and Tim, as it is, they're still there as far as I'm aware. You know, top guys, loved working with them, and it was a pleasure having them working alongside me and for me for as long as they did. Yeah, I don't want to go into it too much.
Yeah,
but
no, indeed.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it's something that
it's very raw.
The entire Matt Williams biopic is something I want to make one day, because it makes me. I mean, I get triggered at the smallest things, people, but to say it triggers me is the biggest understatement in the world. It really is, and it's how he's still comes on the channel and smiles and says, "Yeah, I help the industry out. We'll do this, we'll do that." I have no idea, but that's why I have these two amazing guys with me, because they are genuinely two of the most wonderful people out there, and they have to counterbalance all of the harm that I do. So they have to.
He's not fibbing. He had a major meltdown over the word toys the other day. Seriously,
it's the passion. It's passion. Come on, I'm all heart. No,
more passion.
Okay, no
more passion. More
passion. Thank you, Matt. Yes, there you go. Excellent. Okay, now for once, Graham actually warned me before the show that he's got a final word ready, because obviously I normally catch him out. But actually, hang on. Now I've got to do someone else's channel. Yes, that's a good point. Actually, Michaela, I'm going to get Michaela. Sorry, you guys say something and talk. It's the end of the show.
No, Matt, you've got to get in. You've got to share your LinkedIn profile. You've got to get your profile link in for LinkedIn.
Oh, yes, yeah, you're a moderator. You can put that in, actually. Yeah. Go to channel. Yes. I'm
just going to put my...
It's all fallen apart, Sean, at the last minute, hasn't it?
It's actually not working, because it's not...
Nobody's asking, but I'm about to put my phone number in.
What's going on?
Michaela, I'm making you a moderator. Can you please share the channel with your flight on there? Because I don't think it's the one that you message from. Bear with me while I try and make her a moderator. Put this user in timeout. Is that it? Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And actually, I'm going to make you a moderator, because you've been here long enough. So there you go. You get a double boost. Not only am I asking you to put your link in the chat for that amazing Doncaster flight, it's in my YouTube history somewhere. But you're also now a moderator as well, so you can help out on the channel. Why I haven't done that before, I don't know. Although now Scott from Amok Time Flies is kicking off,
everyone
quite rightly, that now someone else is a moderator. Do you know, you've really made it on YouTube when your audience starts arguing about who a moderator is. Frankly, I think that's actually one of the lines that you cross of seniority. But here we go. We're going because Graham has one ready. I was actually going to give the last word to Matt. No, I'm joking. Graham, are you ready to give us the last word, sir?
Well, funnily enough, yeah, it is one word, funnily enough, and Matt has already used it. So he slipped it in there. I don't know if he could read my mind.
What is going on? It's like we did this really good series. We were terrible in the pre-show. We did a really nice professional show in the middle that gave lots of really good... And now we've completely fallen apart again. Go on.
I'm leaning in closer. Integrity.
Fantastic. And thank you, Aerial Image, for signing up and becoming a channel member during the show. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And Michaela has put the link to the Yorkshire from Above channel in the chat as well. So go over and follow and have a look at the Doncaster video, because actually it's a video of an airport while it's closed. So not only is it cool because obviously you're in airspace that you wouldn't normally be able to get into, which you obviously got permission to go into. It's all a bit eerie and a bit empty, especially if you've flown in and out of that airport before. It all looks a little bit surreal, basically. So we're going to go off and find out and look up what integrity means in the dictionary.
You won't find it in Cap 722D.
Oh,
Steady.
Get a little dig in there, little dig. Go on, Mr. Dig. Do you know what, Graham, tell us what you really think. Come on, tell us what you really think.
Oh dear.
How long is it awkward for me to leave it on? Just focus on Graham. It's okay. This is the bit of the show that only about 12% of the people are watching. They'll be like, why is that show that long?
You've seen the Firmware, and I've got a very thick skin.
I have heard that about you. Bye-bye, everyone. Sean out.